Hey, you guys, it's Friday again. Hope everybody had a really good Merry Christmas. This is the first show that we're recording after our Christmas special. Hope everybody liked the Christmas special. It was so long, it was like 2 hours.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, so this is kind of relating to our last movie because we did the Christmas Chronicles, which was a Kurt Russell movie. This is
Yeah.
also a Kurt Russell movie.
Right.
More of an action character study type of movie.
Yeah.
We've mentioned it a couple times on the show before.
This is one of my favorite movies, probably one of the most underrated movies, in my opinion. I think the thing gets a bum rap. I think a lot of people misunderstand the movie. I mean, Oliver Harper did a really good review of this movie, and he liked it, but he didn't mention a lot of the things that this movie gets into, a lot of the subtext. And I think it has to do with the fact that Harper isn't a veteran. And a lot of this stuff, whoever wrote this story, they must have consulted with some guys that actually served in infantry units or special forces type units, because it talks a lot about a lot of the issues that soldiers go through.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I love this movie.
And what happens like when they have to integrate back into a society.
Yeah, it's about getting out of the service. That's basically
Pretty
what
much,
it is.
yeah.
And what to do with the training and the conditioning you were given by these institutions.
Yeah.
Because it does change you. It does change.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
And it talks about, it even touches on issues like PTSD. In the civilian world, PTSD, would be considered to be kind of like a handicap. But in a military situation, PTSD is like an advantage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would keep you alive.
Well,
as long as you can keep it under control, It's
yeah.
not too
Well,
bad.
I mean, like I said, that's kind of the point of the movie is that, this character, he's almost like, I don't want to call him a tragic character, but he's a character that, through circumstances that were out of his control, is pretty much programmed to be a particular way. And once there's no longer any use for him and he has to like live in a regular civilization, he has a really hard time adapting to that and kind of how that happens. So even though, if we didn't mention it, the movie's called Soldier, it came out in 1998 and stars Kurt Russell in a largely non-speaking role. He only has a few lines in this.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. Some people have kind of criticized it. Well, he doesn't have much speaking. What's set? It tells you right there in the story. When he was in military academy, when they were selecting their soldiers, that the subliminal messaging that they were pumping into the kids, through those loudspeakers or little speakers in the background, was that a soldier does not speak until he is spoken to by a superior officer.
Right.
And he doesn't speak until he's spoken to by somebody who is possibly a superior. Even they don't even speak much between peers.
It's pretty much like I said. This movie, it was actually directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, I think is his name. He also did Mortal Kombat, Alien vs Predator, some other movies like that. Resident Evil, he did the Resident Evil series. It was actually written by David Peoples, who was a co-writer on the script for the original Blade Runner. He also wrote the script for Unforgiven.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about this movie is that it's almost... the writer has said that this is like
it's a Blade Runner spinoff.
A Blade Runner spinoff. There's not a
also
lot.
Alien.
Yeah, but he's like it's set in the same universe. He said pretty much there's supposedly when Kurt Russell goes to this essentially waste disposal planet, there's supposed to be like a spinner in the junkyard somewhere.
Yeah.
Although I haven't seen it, but
there's a lot more hints than that.
And the tattoo, I think
tattooed,
you mentioned. Yeah.
And also if you freeze frame Sergeant Todd, that's who Kurt Russell plays. If you freeze frame Sergeant Todd's military records, it says that he fought at Tannhauser Gate.
Yeah.
And he also fought at the shoulder of Orion.
Yep.
Which these were things that Roy Batty talked about in his death scene in Blade Runner. Also, I looked at what he was awarded, and he was awarded a lot of medals. And one of the medals that he was awarded was the Patch of Pliskin. Okay?
I didn't notice that.
So
That's awesome.
So Escape from New York is also in this universe. All right. So it's pretty cool. And if you looked at his statistics, his strength was like 9,200 and something. His dexterity was like 9,100 and something. His intelligence was like 7,000 something. But his charisma was like 200.
Yeah.
So he had no charisma of his own. He was just high performance, which that they kind of get into that later on. You know, they were not designed to integrate with regular people. Now, this is not the United States Army that we're talking about who's created this guy. This is some kind of corporation that is contracted with I guess, whatever runs the United States or whatever runs America at this point.
Yeah, because it's a futuristic.
Yeah, the banner that they're training under just says American Forces in English, and then it says Forces Americanas in Spanish, which is American Forces. So that's who this is. And they were selected from birth. The babies that were crying the loudest, they put a little tag on them that said 1A. And they were taken away from the rest of the babies. Now, the nurse that was doing this didn't look too happy about it. I'm assuming that the babies that were not selected were killed. I don't know if these were natural birth babies.
They never really get into that because, like Blade Runner, this kind of goes into a lot of issues of genetically enhanced humans. But I'm not sure. Like, I always got the impression that the generation that Kurt Russell's, soldier comes from, I mean, he's about 40 years old in this story. And it's kind of a thing where his, type of soldier is on the wane.
Yeah, they're being replaced.
So I thought that the implication was that these were simply human babies that were selected for their particular aggression or loudness or whatever, and then they were taken away and pretty much brainwashed, essentially.
Well, conditioned. Militaries don't like to talk about it.
Loss of empathy, just training not to speak unless spoken to be obedient, to be loyal.
I think they were test tube babies.
They may have been.
I don't think they had mothers.
Right.
And
I think they never really mentioned that.
No, they didn't seem. And they were all the same age, and they were all just kind of mass produced. And they selected the ones that they wanted and threw the other ones away. Remember, because there was stuff about they were trying to avoid paperwork and try to avoid attention to what they were doing.
Right.
So this was not something that was happening in public, and they were training the kids in secret. And there was constant subliminal programming. You hear them say the subliminal messaging that they were given was saying things like, soldiers do not need friends and family because your unit is your family and your unit's friend is warfare. So they're trying to integrate them all into just one kind of unit of selfless service. They're not individuals really. They're collectivist. Yeah. And you find out a lot of stuff that they had done to them later on, as the movie unfolds, when Todd gets out of service and finally has to deal with families, because you find out the only thing he knew about families is that he had killed some soldiers one time, and the enemy soldiers he was killing were mowing down families. But when he killed those soldiers, he didn't do it to save the families. He just did it to kill the soldiers. He didn't have any compassion for the surviving family members. Now that changes later on in the movie when he makes a connection with these families that he runs into, and he decides to kill the soldiers, not to kill the enemy soldiers, but to protect the families.
Right.
So his motivations had changed about towards the end of the movie. But it's a pretty cool flick, the military academy. You also find out later on that when Todd was about 13, he had killed a classmate to achieve dominance in his class of soldiers. So there was a hierarchy, and they fought to reach the levels the command levels that they fell into. Now he had something like a friend. It was a black guy named Riley. And whenever they show Todd as a child, Riley is always with him. And later on, when Riley thinks Todd gets killed, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but when Riley thinks Todd gets killed, Riley was affected by it. They zoom in on his face, and he becomes in charge of the soldier group. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I don't know.
Well, I think kind of the interesting thing about this movie, too, like I said, that It didn't get great reviews when it came out. It was
Yeah.
actually a critical failure. It cost about $50-60 million to make and only made back about 14 million in the theaters. And it was actually only released, direct to DVD in Europe and other places. So I don't know if it actually ended up making its budget back even. But the interesting thing about it is, like you said, there's a lot of shit going on in this.
That people aren't seeing.
Yeah, it's like Kurt Russell. It's more, like I said, it's more a character study than an action movie, and it also has some interesting things to say about nature versus nurture type
Very
of
much so,
arguments
yeah.
because. Kurt Russell's generation of soldiers who we're assuming are fully human, but are simply taken away at birth and are just, conditioned into a particular lifestyle. And then, when the movie starts, you see that there's now a new generation who have been completely genetically engineered and supposedly,
They've been tweaked.
yeah, and are better soldiers in every way. They are faster, they
Yeah.
are stronger, they are less empathetic, they have no feelings or
Right.
emotions and stuff like that. So, but the interesting thing is that over the course of the story, and Kurt Russell's character, after he is, essentially discarded, in service for these new soldiers to come in, him almost like developing humanity, but it's not really developing humanity because he had it all along.
Right.
It just goes to show that you can't suppress it no matter how much you condition these
Yeah,
people,
and-
which is why the corporation wanted to genetically engineer people that couldn't feel anything.
Another thing that's kind of left out in the reviews are always talking about, well, there's no character development in time. There is a lot of character development.
There
It's just
is,
that
yeah.
He's not speaking.
Yeah.
What happens is they show you his flashbacks and they show you his memories and they show you what he's looking at. And you've got to do it. You've got to piece it together yourself. And really, I think having military service kind of helps you because guys that served automatically understand what the issues are that they're talking about.
Yeah.
But one of the good characters in the movie that a lot of people don't mention is Gary Busey's in it.
Yeah.
And normally he plays kind of like a psycho, but in this he actually plays a good guy.
Yeah, he's like the voice of reason.
Yeah, he's Todd's captain, Captain Church. Now, Captain Church wasn't bred and born as soldiers, but he just commanded them. He's just a regular guy, regular soldier, whose dad was also in the military as a maintenance officer, and Church had seen combat, and he works for this same company, and he's grown to like respect these super soldiers that they created, and he likes Todd, even though they kind of handle these guys kind of like trained attack dogs. They don't get close to them on a personal level. They just kind of command them, and they're in the same room with them, but they kind of keep emotional distance from them because they're kind of in a certain. They're expensive, but they're also expendable.
Expendable,
and you don't want to get involved with their conditioning because they're conditioned to be not empathetic. Because that's how. If a unit doesn't have empathy, it can take a lot of casualties and continue going because they're not really helping the other guys. The best way to help them is win a battle.
Yeah.
That's really how you tend to look at it in really good infantry type units and special forces. All depends on the situation, though. Well, Church, he has to deal with this colonel that shows up. Now, the colonel that shows up, his name is I think Mikkel.
Or Meekum, I think.
Meekum, that's what it is, Meekum.
Yeah.
And he's wearing kind of a gray uniform, which kind of makes me think that he's kind of like part of an intelligence outfit in a higher echelon. And he shows up in his gray uniform. He's a colonel. He's got new soldiers. And these guys are just genetically tweaked out super soldiers. They work out like crazy. They're faster.
They
they're
never
stronger.
get tired.
They don't ever get tired. They don't have any kind of... They're almost robotic. They don't have any compassion at all. And... Church, he doesn't believe in this. He's like, yeah, but my guys are battle tested and they're creative. And basically what Church is talking about is my guys are honorable.
Yeah.
Because later on, when, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because a lot happens in the story. Later on, Meekum decides to actually betray and just abandon all the old soldiers and leave them on a planet to die, including Todd. And I think he thought Todd was dead, though. He didn't know Todd was still alive.
Because he just got dumped on the garbage planet with the other dead soldiers that were killed during the fight between the superior quote-unquote soldiers and the old soldiers.
Yeah, and Captain Church, Gary Busey, he does a great job. He's like, okay, that's it. I've had enough of your West Point ass, and he rebels against the colonel shoots and kills him.
Yeah.
And eventually, towards the end, the colonel's got to answer to Todd, eventually, which is kind of this theme of where sometimes in the military, the guys that wars are always kind of like rich men's wars and poor men are fighting them. Okay? And a lot of soldiers are being trained to do all this kind of, to fight these battles, and they're not really fighting their own wars, they're fighting somebody else's war. So, and many times these guys at the top are kind of paper pushers, and when you're talking about pure honor and ability, they don't quite stack up to some of these guys who are down there in the trenches fighting. And that was kind of the theme for that scene of what Todd did to the colonel.
Well, because, I mean, and the whole thing, too, is that one of the, the character arc of Kurt Russell's character, Todd, is that he discovers that he can fight for something, like for something honorable and for something important and meaningful, rather than just killing people because someone told you to do it. Yeah, because somebody told you to.
Because they were being trained to do things kind of dispassionately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just go here, kill these people.
You're ordered to kill these people, do this, and to be kind of emotionless about it. Later on, he evolves to fight his own wars to protect the people he cares about, not just to kill people but based on orders. And how the movie ends is pretty important to the entire story arc, because Todd, all right, when Todd was thrown away like garbage on the garbage planet, his surviving unit was disarmed, and they were just turned into regular workers. And they were kind of like the servants to the new soldiers. They weren't allowed to have weapons. Later on, in one of the little missions, they were told them that they had to set up this sensor array. And Riley goes, "Are we going to get issued weapons?" He goes, No, only soldiers get weapons. And he saluted. He says, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "You don't have to salute. You're not a soldier anymore." And you could just see that, the humiliation where they went from having a purpose to not really having a purpose anymore. At the end of the movie, Todd rescues the family scavengers that adopted him, and he rescues his old unit. They rebel against the corporation that they worked for, and they steal the ship and escape that garbage planet to go to the Trinity moons where those garbage people were originally trying to go.
That's where they were trying to go.
They were trying to get there, but they crash landed.
And so they had to kind of eke a society out of this big garbage pile.
Right. So he tries to get them to where they're going to the Trinity moon to start a new colony.
Yeah.
And by this time, Todd has adopted a family who had lost the father. The father.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what they're talking about, what this story is talking about, or that element of the story, is they're kind of talking about the life cycle. Creatures and human beings and animals have life cycles, and nations kind of have life cycles too. The nations that Todd was serving is the same one out of Blade Runner and Alien. It's kind of taken over by corporations. It's kind of towards the end of its life. Well, Todd and his group, a group of soldiers and the group of scavengers are going to a new world to start a new society, to start a new civilization. So it's the beginning of the birth cycle again. And a lot of times, if you look at history, that's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
Surviving soldiers from some kind of an apocalypse or something rebel, and they go carve out their own existence in a new land, And that's what they're talking about there. It's a good part. That's a good way to end the story in the movie, if you ask me. He becomes one of the founding fathers of a new colony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it's good, too, because, when he has to fight, like I said, for the scavengers and, like, the people that he has come to care about, who is, his adopted family and extended family, it also helps him, his humanity, like, helps him fight the corporations, because he basically goes into guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
He can do, like, creative things where, the maybe more robotic soldiers kind of only do things in a particular way.
And that went back into the nature versus nurture aspect of the movie. When Todd was back in military school, when he's like 7 or 8 years old, one of the things that they would show him is a pack of dogs and a wild boar fighting. to show them that a pack of dogs could beat a wild boar.
Yeah.
So fighting as a team, all right, is always better than fighting as an individual, even if you're strong, okay? But it's also talking about the struggle for life and the struggle for existence, all right? Nature. That nature is kill or be killed. And that was the theme of their upbringing, kill or be killed. So, to solve this problem of kill or be killed, how do you do it? Are these soldiers nurtured or are they born? So in other words, there's a difference between being created or born great or being created great through a process. Let's say like training and experience.
Right.
And the movie definitely falls on the side that it's better to be nurtured. In other words, experience, battle experience, honor, that it's not something that comes about just through genetic manipulation. It's saying that soldiers aren't born, soldiers are created. Or all people, great people are not born, great people are created. That's another way to look at it. Yeah. And that's the theme they're talking about. The new guys, the new soldiers were good, but they got defeated a lot. And they did dumb stuff because they didn't have any experience. They didn't have any honor. They didn't.
And they were rigid in their outlook, it seemed like.
And they weren't created slowly and nurtured by an environment and leadership and and relationships between commanders and people. And, they were just kind of like shake and bake.
Yeah.
Shake and bake soldiers. Yeah, shake and bake super soldier. It doesn't work. That's what they were talking about.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the interesting conundrum going on in this movie. It's just like, is it really good to have all of these, essentially drones or just, that don't feel any... They don't have any feelings. They don't have any personal empathy. It's like, I feel like a lot of times that's seen, and particularly by the corporation in this movie, empathy and compassion is seen as a weakness, but it's really not in a lot of situations. And I feel like this movie kind of, focused on that a little bit.
In the situation that Todd and his men were in, I think they did a pretty good job of equipping them for what they were being asked to do.
Yeah.
Which is they sent them out to random places where they didn't know anybody there and just kill enemy soldiers. Yeah. And to do it, dispassionately. Because you don't know either side. It's not your job to know either side. The corporation's telling you to do it.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't they didn't want them emotionally involved in it. They didn't want any kind of emotional impact on them of seeing people killed.
Right.
So that's how they did it. They just, that your unit is your family and warfare is your friend. Just keep it simple. That's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And don't get involved with it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of cool callbacks in the movie. I mean, in one scene, they kind of quickly show in the beginning Sergeant Todd's military career, some of the battles that he fought in. One of them was on the Argentine moons. That's what they call it.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you looked at the spacesuit he was wearing, they're fighting on the moon in a spacesuit. It's the same spacesuit pretty much from Alien 1. The spacesuits that they used to go into the...
That's right. I thought that looked
There's a bunch of alien stuff and a bunch of stuff from Blade Runner.
It's not super blatant, but there's like a lot of... I would call them Easter eggs, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, even though I don't think it's... it's not a secret that the writer wanted this to be in the same universe.
Yeah.
But they don't whack you over the head with it. It's just like a couple little references.
And also the same universe as Escape from New York.
Yeah, I guess it is. I didn't notice that, actually.
Yeah, he got the patch of Pliskin.
Because I've seen this 2 or 3 times, but I did not notice
Got the patch of Pliskin.
I haven't noticed the spinner yet, either.
It's in there somewhere.
I've heard that it's in, like, the first half of the movie, but I can't... because, he's sent to this planet called Arcadia, something that had numbers at the end of it, and it's a waste disposal planet. It's essentially just a giant planet-sized junkyard, and... Supposedly there's a spinner in there, but I haven't seen it. But there was so much junk in it.
And it's also a desert.
Yeah.
And there's some scenes of planes, broken up planes in the desert with propellers and wings set up, and they were all living inside of it in the desert. And it looked just like out of the Mad Max video game.
Oh, yeah.
Where they were using the propellers to generate wind electricity.
Yeah.
So you just see a lot of Easter eggs from a bunch of other movies in it.
Yeah,
It's good.
which, like I said, they don't hit you over the head with it like,
No.
hey, look, it's like Mad Max, or hey, look, it's like Alien. It's just like, it's very subtle, and it's usually just like in a little flashback or something like that. And like I said, I love the detail about his tattoos, about like all the battles he had fought in.
Yeah.
So like if you saw Blade Runner, you'd be like, oh yeah.
They were in other battles.
Yeah, that's like pretty funny. So it kind
Right.
of like expands it to a larger
so there
type of thing.
There are replicants and androids in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is Blade Runner and Alien.
Yeah.
And another thing about the movie is that I have the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is really good. I watched it on my TV. I think it maxes out at about 1080.
Yeah, because our TV in our bedroom is not
it looks
the
good.
same
Yeah, it looks good
as the one in the living room.
but it doesn't look good in very super high definition. You can see that these are
very
because
strange
on our
looking.
big TV, man, with that motion smoothing kind of feel to it, it looks weird. It looks like an old BBC Doctor Who.
I think you
episode.
can turn motion smoothing off, though, can you?
Yeah, it didn't look good. And also, if it's super high, like 4K style television, you can tell that the sets are made out of plastic.
Yeah.
And the CG looks terrible. But in lower resolution, where the movie's supposed to look very soft.
Yeah.
It looks about as good as, I don't know, Alien 3.
That was the thing. It's like so weird. We watched it a time or two, like on the TV in our room, and then we had friends over, and we watched it in the living room.
Yeah, it looked crazy.
And it looked because the one in the TV in the living room is like way higher definition than the one in our room is, and so I was like, wow, this is very strange looking, and I couldn't like you said, it looked like a set, which I guess it was, but. Well, because, see, initially, I think the film was actually supposed to be filmed on location, but because the locations where they're going to film it, they flooded out, or there was like some kind of horrible weather disaster, and they couldn't do it there, so they ended up having to film most of it on sets. And when you see it like in slightly lower resolution, you can't tell. It looks, like it's outside. But when you see it on super high definition, like you said, it looks like a Doctor Who episode.
Looks like a Doctor Who.
Like it looks like an older TV show.
Yeah, and it looks like they're sitting on a stage.
Yeah,
with
it's
fake
very
sets.
weird looking.
Yeah. You want to see it in lower.
I never saw anything
definition.
like that. It's,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It was really weird because I guess movies nowadays, because this was from 1998, so it was like that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So movies they make nowadays, they're more tuned into like how people are going to be watching them, so they try to make them so they look really good in high definition, but it's like they weren't really thinking about that in 1998 because they didn't know people were going to have fucking
they didn't know HD was coming,
TVs that you could see every fucking pore on people's faces, which is not always a good thing.
Crussell looks really good in it.
He spent a long time getting into shape for this,
18 months.
And it shows.
He trained for 18 months. He's probably in the top shape.
And I think
he was almost 50.
I think he was 47 when he filmed
I think it was 49. I thought they said 49.
I saw 47. Maybe some of the other ones said 40.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could have been different.
He's pushing 50 in it, but he doesn't look it.
Also, and this was on the Wikipedia page, actually very early in the filming, he broke his ankle doing one of the stunts. And so they basically had to film all the shit of him like being sick and like laying down or sitting and stuff. They had to film all that first until the ankle healed, and then later on they had to do the standing up and running stuff.
The guns have aged well. For you guys that are into guns, you see stuff like Claridge, 9mm Claridge high-tech carbines. Haven't seen those in forever, but I think they used some of those in Total Recall. AK long-barreled AKs like RPKs in a bullpup kits with like 2 bayonets and optics. Red dots with flashlights on them. Neat guns, Steyrs. The bad guys kind of look like the Harkonnens. Black body armor, masks. Gas masks, miniguns, flamethrowers, rocket launchers. A lot of cool guns make an appearance in it.
Yeah.
Some of them they're dressed up. Most of them. Some of them are stock.
Although, like I said, I think the reason why maybe this didn't do very well at the theater. One, because I think they tried to market it toward teenagers, which was kind of strange. And I think they also kind of tried to market it as a straight up action flick, which it's really not.
Really not an
There's
action
a lot of action set pieces and battles and shit like that in it, but most of it is a character. It's based on, Kurt Russell's character, kind of his character arc and how he kind of develops a sense of humanity and things like that.
Yeah, it's more of a mythology.
Yeah,
it has action in it, but it's a mythology similar to Conan in a way.
Yeah. So I think it was more a failure of marketing than
than
weakness on the film's part, because I think it's actually, I really liked it, and I don't usually I'm not a huge action movie fan. I like some of them, but I really liked this one because it seemed like the story had some depth, the characters had some depth, and it had like an interesting mythology building, an interesting message to it. So I actually really enjoyed it, and I thought Kurt Russell was great in it, even though he hardly talks.
Yeah, he doesn't have to, though.
That's what I mean. He acts a lot with his face, with his eyes and stuff like that. So you can see like what a good actor he is, because he doesn't have to talk.
And in the end, when he goes totally commando to kill off the bad guys and save the scavengers, he does some stuff right out of Commando with the face paint. Some of his one-liners kind of sound like stuff that Arnold would say back in an old Arnold Schwarzenegger action flick. So, they're doing Easter eggs, too. Him jumping up out of the water and killing guys with knives, Rambo style. So he's Rambo and Commando.
Yeah.
At the same time. It's Space Rambo.
Space Rambo.
Space Rambo. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, if you are into Blade Runner, if you like this, if you like Kurt Russell, obviously, because Tom has a big man crush.
What do you call it, a man crush?
It's a man crush.
I like Russell.
I know you do. And if you like Kurt Russell and you haven't seen it, because like I said, this one fell way under the radar. I had never even heard about it until we saw the review on Oliver Harper's channel. And I had never heard of it.
Rotten Tomatoes, I
think it's 12%.
Yeah, 12%, but that's the critics.
Yeah.
The audience score was higher, it's like 43, and it's very polarized. A lot of like 4 and 5 stars going, man, fuck these critics. They don't know what they're talking about. This is a great movie. So there's a lot of that, and then there's a lot of them that are just kind of some of them are just kind of indifferent.
Yeah.
But I think over time, if this movie were exposed to more people and they really kind of understood the themes that it was talking about, it'd have been rated a lot higher.
Yeah, because there's a lot more going on in this. I mean, like I said,
it's a cult classic.
This was the same guy that co-wrote Blade Runner and wrote Unforgiven. I mean, those classic movies. Yeah. So it's not he knows what he's doing. He knew what he was doing. Right. So it's not just like some throwaway.
I think
the
timing.
Movie.
I think it came out. The timing was strange. It was late '90s.
Yeah.
And a lot of movies like this people didn't really. They were kind of passé in a certain way. The '80s action movie was very passé
by then. Sure.
By then.
Plus, it has a very generic title.
It does. I think the title had a lot
either.
to do with it. If it had a sensational title that made
punchy.
You feel like it was part of the Blade Runner or Alien universe, it would have done a lot better. It probably would have
done better. Yeah, because even the cover of it comes across like looking very much like a knockoff, middle of the road kind of action movie, which it's really not. So like I said, I think that's more a failure of marketing than the film. They just
didn't have the right poster. They didn't have the right marketing. They didn't have the right box for the damn thing. They just the title was wrong.
That happens a lot, like I said. I mean, because the people that make movies, and we talk about this all the time in regards to like trailers and things, because we go to the movies a lot, so we see a lot of trailers, and sometimes you'll see a trailer and go, wow, that looks stupid as hell. But then like when you see the movie, you're like, wow, that was pretty good. The trailer was completely misleading. And I said, well, the people that make the movie are not the same people that make the trailer. Right. So making a trailer is an art form just as much as making a movie is, and sometimes they fuck it up.
Yeah, and I don't think the trailer from this one was very good. And also during this time, you can say Soldier, it's just like Universal Soldier, because that was only
that's what I thought of too.
And then you had like G.I. Jane and a bunch of weird shit was going on with these little soldier movies. Most of them weren't any good.
Yeah.
So I think had they named this differently
and had different cover art
and sold it as something differently, I think it would have done a lot better.
Might have benefited by going a little more art house route. Maybe not completely, but maybe kind of a mixture between.
If there was a way they could have actually gotten a xenomorph in there, or a replicant, or something like that.
Yeah, up the sci-fi quotient. Because it is set on a different planet. It's not like, it is a sci-fi movie, essentially. So they probably could have ramped that up more than. Because like I said, if I just saw the cover of this on the shelf and saw the title, I would just pass right on by. It just looks like.
If they had somehow had the licensing to where, this same corporation that made Todd was also making the Colonial Marines, or they were also, they had some of those alien eggs or were trying to get them, or Weyland Corporation, because that's what they're talking about. It's just that they're not mentioning it.
Yeah. And like I said, and if we could go 20 years back in time, and be in the marketing department for this
Right.
movie.
I could have made this bitch a hit.
We could have made it go better because
Yeah.
they really focused on the wrong things,
They're-
like
yeah.
in the marketing campaign. But that happens a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a long time, like for a movie to find its audience, which happened with Blade Runner. It happened with, speaking of Kurt Russell, happened with The Thing also.
Yeah.
So, you know, what are you going to do? Nothing.
Yeah.
That's what. But yeah, so go check out Soldier from 1998 if you like that kind of thing. And if you like Kurt Russell, and if you haven't seen it, like I said, it's pretty underrated and I actually quite enjoyed it. And that will do it for our latest movie retrospective. And remember, if you like the show, to like, share, subscribe. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/13o'clock podcast, or go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account if you'd like to make a one-time donation. Oh, also remember, my book, Faceless Villain, Volume 2, is finally out in audiobook. It is up. It is on Audible.
Selling like crazy.
Yeah, it's like I was amazed how many copies
Selling like
it sold
20, 30 a day.
in the first day.
Yeah.
I was like, is that right?
Yeah.
When I could, because I check the sales figures every day because I'm kind of anal retentive like that. But yeah, it should be up on iTunes in a day or two. It usually, once it appears on Audible and Amazon, it usually takes 2 or 3 days for it to come up on iTunes and other platforms. So look out for it on there. And if you like the book, remember, write a review. It does actually really help a lot. And remember, if you like our movie retrospectives, like this one right here, they come out every Friday. Our 13 o'clock matinee, which is 3 new movies in the theater, comes out every Sunday. And our regular episodes are out every Tuesday, so check them out. And we will see you next time. Bye.